Welcome back to another video. What were the weaknesses from last season? Why did we fail to get promotion to League One? Is Mark Hughes learning from those mistakes? What were the mistakes? And what are we thinking going into the season with the transfer window ending in around a month's time? What more business do we need to do? And who are the positives and the negatives so far from the 7 players that we brought in this transfer window? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Like the video if you do, and subscribe if you're new as well. It is all massively appreciated. So start off with the pessimism around Valley Parade this season. Last season it was all optimism and HMS, you know what. And was that caused by Mark Hughes? Was it caused by the end of last season? Is it caused by the transfer business? Is it caused by media hype over teams like Wrexham and Notts County? I know some pundits have had us come in 14th, which I think is a bit of a joke. Although when I read the observation on why we are going to come 14th, I can see it, but then I can't see how he's matched that with 14th. Although, to be fair, like I said, the observation was correct. We were over the line on Andy Cook and Harry Lewis last season. In the middle of the boxes, in around halfway, we weren't right. We didn't create enough chances. The midfield was too slow. We were too slow in bringing the ball out from the back. We didn't go for the overkill. You know, when we were leading games 1-2-0, we didn't go for the third, fourth goal. We didn't commit enough players in the penalty box, and that's why Andy Cook was the only player getting all the goals. We didn't press high enough up the pitch. When teams came to Valley Parade and started playing out from the back themselves, we let them and just sat back and put pressure on ourselves. And especially at home, if we put pressure on ourselves, the fans can recognise it, and that's when we don't get behind the players, and rightly so, because when we sat there and we can see what's happening and we can see a goal coming, you know, we're just alerting the players, and they never woke up to that. And there were far too many players last season who looked a bit dejected, and I think whilst a lot of them did put 100% effort in, there were a few who we have released who didn't quite show the commitment that we needed. Stubborn team selections from Mark Hughes, and the home form at the start of the season was woeful. And our record against the bottom 6, well, I'll just tell you now, 5 wins, 5 draws and 2 defeats, which simply ain't good enough. That were against Crawley, Rochdale, Harrogate, and Wimbledon, and another team that came in the bottom 6 who I can't remember, but those results just aren't good enough. And if you only winning 5 games out of 12 against the bottom 6, you know, you don't deserve to go up. And when you look at teams like Stevenage, Northampton, Carlisle, Leyton Orient, they were blowing those teams apart, and that's why they were at the bottom of the division. And I think that was the difference. When we were 1-2-0 up against them, we'd sat back, we put pressure on ourselves, we gave them the ball, we gave them too much time and space, and that's what cost us wins, and that turned them into draws ultimately. I think when you look at games like Barrow against teams that like to sit back and soak up pressure themselves and then counter-attack us, we were too slow passing out from the back. I remember, you know, Critchlow and Matty Platt, you know, taking 3, 4, 5 steps, or 3, 4, 5 passes to each other before they played forward, and that was caused by the full-backs not being attack-minded and passing the ball backwards. Now, in pre-season, what we've already seen is we've already seen a 3-5-2, a more attack-minded formation in the way we're using it. We're using it to press up the pitch and try and cram the opposition in their half. It hasn't really worked against teams like Hull, Middlesbrough, and to be fair, I don't think any of us could watch the game against Bolton, but that ended 5-2, which probably suggests that we got perhaps played off the park because they could break down the press. And I think that's why we didn't do that last season. We didn't press high up the pitch in case that happened. But when you're playing against better opposition, players who are more quicker, more agile, got more flair, more ability, and that's why they're playing in the higher divisions. When you're up against, you know, centre-backs like Taylor, Kelly, Stubbs, and even Matty Platt, who aren't as quick, aren't as agile, they are going to get turned quickly. So I think that's why they've been made to look like fools against those better players in the higher divisions. And I think that's why in League 2, when they are at a similar level, we should be playing the press and putting more pressure on oppositions, you know, getting the ball into the forward areas quicker and creating more chances. So the transfer business, is that another reason why we're going into the season a bit more gloomy and not as much optimism? I think it probably is, because last season we brought in 20 odd players. If you count January, it's more 30 players. The negatives so far, probably Taylor and Dodwar from what we've seen from pre-season, I'm talking on the day of Rochdale, so I don't know what's happened from that game. Odra, when played as a wing back, he hasn't looked as good when he played as a winger against Middlesbrough, put in a fantastic cross, and it could come as a confidence thing or what you're most comfortable in, and he obviously has been signed because of his versatility, and it makes us more flexible, which has been talked a lot by Mark Hughes, and that's something that we needed to change last season because we were too stubborn with formations. Although we did change to a diamond at times, I think we were too stubborn and caught in our ways with that as well. We became too predictable. And I think if you can adapt in game, it makes you a much better side. And some of the signings we've signed has made us do that. But Taylor has looked a bit slow. But like I've already hinted, that against higher opposition, when you're playing against Championship footballers, you are going to get found out a bit. And Dodra, like I say, Hartlepool and Barnsley and his other clubs that he's played for, he has been all over the place. He's been playing as a winger, an attacking midfielder, in central midfield, out on the left, playing as a left back. And when you hear him speak, he has said that I want to be in the forward areas, creating chances, playing as a number 10, playing as a winger, and whatever you feel more comfortable and confident in, you're likely to play better in that position. And I think that's the case with Clark Odra. In terms of positive signings, I think Pattinson is in the top 5 best signings in the league this season. For simply what he's going to add to our midfield, the more creative, risky player who's going to be tenacious. He'll do what Gilead does, but do it better by taking more risks in the final third, and that's something that we craved last season. I think even players like Tyler Smith's probably the best second signing behind Pattinson because he offers pace, he offers something different in behind. If he can link up with Cook, I think he's missed the last 2 friendlies, correct me if I'm wrong, Rochdale and Middlesbrough because of injury, which has probably slowed his progress connecting with Andy Cook. If he can link up with them two throughout the season, it could be a dangerous partnership, and hopefully they do link up because he's the type of striker we haven't had, a pacey striker who stretches defences and has a good finish on him, and when he's only played at Championship level and he has a good goal per game record up there, hopefully can convert that into League 2 football. But then you've got a few signings like your McDonald's and a couple of other players who we have signed who I haven't mentioned because, they're sort of in between. We haven't seen enough of them to judge them yet. I think McDonald could be a good signing because he offers what Clayton did with experience and a good player on the ball. Although he's coming towards the back end of his career, he could also be a better player in the dressing room as well. A better player for young players to speak to, especially with his personal difficulties that he's had during his life. So the transfer business, we've only bringing 7 players in. We needed evolution instead of revolution, so I'm relatively pleased with it. But I think the main difference is the signings aren't as bold, not bringing in players like Richie Smallwood from a starting Championship midfielder down to League 2. We haven't made any of those signings, which does make the signings look a bit worse. That's just my thoughts on the transfer business. Anyway, the pessimism also can be caused by Mark Hughes. Obviously, the way he finished last season, we obviously crashed out of the playoffs in extraordinary circumstances by Carlisle. Bringing Matty Platt on for Scott Banks was one of the worst substitutions I've ever seen. And obviously, crashing out of the playoffs in itself is obviously a pretty it's just a damp way to finish the season. And Mark Hughes' 3rd season, if you count his half a season that he took over from Derek Adams, it's a big year for Mark Hughes, and his contract's up at the end of the season. If we don't go up this season, I can't have another 6 years. I can't have 6 years in League 2, and it is make or break, I think, for Mark Hughes this season. He's got to correct those mistakes. Those mistakes being too slow on the ball. We've got to move the ball quicker. Not going for overkill and dominating games. Not when we're in front, go for the second goal, go for the 3rd goal, and get more players in the box as well. I think now we're somewhat last season with the 3-5-2. We should have 2 strikers in the box and an attacking midfielder in the box at all times. If we're putting a cross in from the right hand side, the left wing back should be in the area, and at least one of the 2 midfielders as well. Because if you've got 4 players who are back if a counter attack is going to occur. Obviously the pressing, we've seen that in pre-season, so that's a good change. Stubborn team selections. If you've got a big squad, you've got to use the whole squad. Average home form at the beginning of the season. Now we have actually only lost 2 home games in 2023 if you count in league games, which is a fantastic record. Those 2 defeats being that 1-0 defeat to Barrow in February and a 2-1 defeat to Rochdale, and we've been 8 unbeaten at home as well. But like I say at the start of the video, only 5 wins, 5 draws and 2 defeats against the bottom 6. That must improve. So let me know your thoughts going into a season. Are you feeling pessimistic? Are you feeling optimistic? Is it because of the media maybe why we're feeling a bit more pessimistic going into this season? With Wrexham getting loads of hype and Stockport with their fantastic season last season, the recruitment from them, Notts County with their style of play, and the other League 2 clubs getting a lot more attention than us, maybe making us feel a bit more left out in the promotion race. I don't think we are. I'm feeling pretty optimistic, not as optimistic as last season, but I still think we're in with a shout of autos, and maybe being underdogs could help us. But you're still going to get Barrows who come to Valley Parade because we are a big club, because it's a big stadium, big fan base. Teams are still going to come and park the bus, so we've got to come up with better ways to counteract that next season, and hopefully under Mark Hughes we will. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Like the video if you did, and subscribe if you do. Have a good one.